Everybody today. I'm glad to see everybody. I think we're only missing one of our committee members, but I welcome everybody else and even those who are not on the committee. Our first item of business is item 1.01, and that is going to be the approval of the minutes from last time. Do I have a maker of the motion?
Yes, Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to accept the minutes of the ad hoc committee for AI and electronic devices use policy on October 28, 2025. Ad hoc committee, all the minutes being stated, I'd like to make the motion to approve the minutes as presented.
Ms. LaVentus Wells, I have a motion on the table. Do I have a second? Second. Thank you so much, Dr. Stiles. I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the motion carries. So we're going to move on. In the interest of time today, because we have lots to do tonight, we're going to move on to item number 2.01, review of draft policy revisions. And you may remember, just a recap, at our last meeting, we really just talked about what the purpose of this committee is, what our charge was going to be. We had Mr. Webb explain what he has found with as far as other policies around the state and around the country. We had some input from our instructional team, and so without further ado, I'm just going to turn it over to Mr. Webb, because it was his task to come back to the table with the first stab at a draft for us to have a working session today, and that's really what this is. We're not looking to vote on anything today. It's more of a working session.
Thank you. All right, so after listening to some of the comments from last meeting, I went back to the drawing board, looked at additional policies, and found, in looking at our policies, I think policy IA is conducive. Now, there's a pun there with AI and IA, but I'll move on from that. But so IA being sort of the basic philosophy curriculum of the school district board policy as it pertains to instruction, I thought that this topic fit nicely within that policy. So that is the one that I used to work from and to revise. So the policy, as currently revised, is really in 3 sections. So the first section, introduction, I went back and a little historical context for everybody. This policy was last revised in 2016 as part of the Instructional Review Committee, board committee that reviewed a lot of the instructional policies. And so the introduction was revised at that time. And you can see in the first paragraph, which my proposed revisions would delete, it references the strategic plan and some language that no longer exists in the strategic plan. And so that revision, as far as the first paragraph, I have proposed to remove the first paragraph in its entirety, and leave the second paragraph, because I think that's the most important paragraph in section 1. So again, the first paragraph, dated, no longer in line with what's in the strategic plan, and honestly a little extraneous from my view, from what is needed in the policy. Now, let me say all this. In working with these revisions, I consulted Susan Stevens, Dr. Stevens, and her team. They've reviewed all these revisions. Dr. Royster obviously has reviewed, and Dr. Turner and others have all reviewed. So this has been a team effort, so I don't want to sound like I've just done this by myself. There's been a lot of people working together on these revisions. So that's the first section. That's the introduction section. The second section is the core, the crux, meat and potatoes of the policy, talking about artificial intelligence. Based upon what we talked about last meeting, York 1 had a pretty solid policy on artificial intelligence and instruction. So I used that policy sort of as the base language in developing section 2 of these proposed revisions. So as you can see, where it titles and lists section or letter A through G as sort of the tenets of what should be in and used throughout the district for as educational use and student privacy and security, ethical use, accessibility, all of the things that we talked about at last meeting, which are so important to have in an AI policy, are all included in this draft. But we beefed it up. You know, we looked at York 1 and we said, all right, these are good, but let's beef up and enhance and strengthen this language. So we did that in a sort of an opening paragraph to that section, talking about the importance of AI if it's used properly, how it can be beneficial to education and instruction, but then going into the parameters that, again, are strengthened up a little bit more than some of the other policies in South Carolina, and throughout the country, for that matter. But I do think it's important in the last paragraph to note that, you know, that the last paragraph for its proposed revision really talks about how AI is a supplemental tool for education. It's not there to replace teaching, but it's a supplemental tool. And obviously, it also goes into talk about plagiarism and making sure that it's used with academic integrity and honesty. All very important things, must comply with the behavior code. Then the third section is district technology. All right, we talked about not only artificial intelligence in education, but we talked about district technology, and is this a good place and time to really talk about the board putting a sort of an affirmative stance and recognizing that technology can be good, but it has to be used in furtherance of the curriculum and done in a manner that doesn't have students on technology when it's not necessary, right? And be on screens when they could be interacting with others and strengthening personal skills and things of that nature. So that last paragraph in section 3 really hits home on that topic. Talks about how technology can improve student learning, but that schools must be cognizant of limiting student use and dependence on technology so that it does not impact student growth, interpersonal skills, creativity, collaboration, things of that nature. Obviously, critical thinking and technology can go hand in hand. You don't have to sacrifice one for the other. And so the last sentence, as you can see in there, schools will monitor screen time for students to promote independent work and prevent use of technology that is not academically beneficial or excessive in duration. So that's sort of a summary of these revisions. 3 sections. Dr. Stevens, I don't know if you want to comment on any of it at this time or wait for questions. But that is a summary sort of to get the ball rolling.
Thank you so much, Doug. I know I have a few questions, but I want to ask members of the committee if anybody has any questions for any of the folks here today. Dr. Stiles.
Yes, I have a question. It's actually on section 3, Doug. You use the language in the first sentence. Oh, I'm sorry. I want to direct you, Doug, to section number 3, district technology. I noticed on 2 occasions we said schools shall, in the first sentence, effectively integrate district devices, etc. And then in the last sentence, schools will monitor screen time. And I just wondered if it would be a little bit more clear if we stated school administration shall ensure the effective integration of district devices and technology. I just felt like that specificity may be needed because that definitely is someone's responsibility at the school. And when you say schools shall, then I would ask the question, who's responsible for that? That's my thought on that. I would like to see consideration, Chair Mosley, for maybe being a little bit more specific about who exactly is responsible for that.
Thank you, Dr. Stiles. And that actually hit on a couple of things I wanted clarity on it too. Does anybody else have any questions before?
Just to frame this up a little bit more before additional questions, as Ms. Mosley stated earlier, this is, again, another work session, so feel free to share any thoughts, comments, feedback, and we'll go back to the drawing table and try to come up with a additional version, perhaps the final draft version for your review, but certainly open to any feedback, criticism, anything that you have.
I'm going to go ahead and ask my questions, and then someone else may think of something. And this is a bigger question, and it might go to, it kind of piggybacks off what Dr. Stiles said. So up in the paragraph above that, Doug, I think I already talked to you about this briefly, but where it says schools in collaboration with the academics department must set procedures and parameters pertaining, I felt like we needed to be a little bit more direct about who is providing that, because I feel like that needs to be consistent across every single school, which I guess at this time, we're talking about middle and high schools, right? Both. Because we've had trouble in the past with, I use dress code as an example, how we have a dress code, but then we have different schools implementing things different ways. And I just feel like we need to have a consistency, particularly with guidelines, and I don't know if I don't know how to strengthen that. I just felt like it needed to be a little bit more direct as to, and consistent, and more of a, this is going to be consistent across the board versus leaving it up to the individual
school.
schools to do, right? And then the second question I have, it kind of goes along with that, Dr. Stevens, because so much of what we're putting in this policy is we're putting, this is what we believe as a board, this is what we feel like should be adhered to and all of that. But at the end of the day, we have to make sure that we are training our teachers to understand ethical use, to understand what transparency means from a parental standpoint. And, you know, we have to make sure we do all that. And so I guess I'm just wanting reassurance that we are addressing those things, and what, because I know this is it's kind of a brave new world, and we might be building the airplane as we fly it a little bit here with as far as the training goes.
So you're
speak to that?
You're absolutely correct. So our current training model focuses on the ethical use and the implementation of the tool as an instructional tool. It focuses on the tool itself. With the development of this, we actually can use this as a scaffold for our training to ensure that we are touching on each of these things and that we have a continuous cycle to revisit that. So for example, we currently have focused on the accessibility for teachers and students, but we haven't drilled down to that as deeply as maybe we should, as may be indicated by, as it's written here. So once the board comes to consensus on a final policy, we will be able to use this as our framework, as our success criteria.
Well, Ms. Mosley, one other consideration too would be between the policy and what Susan's describing as whatever the training protocols end up being, we would typically on something like this write administrative rule, which would be the opportunity to provide a little more clarity to what does ethical mean. Now, there's already a section in there, as you will probably recall, there's a section in there about ethics in general, which obviously that applies, but I think more particular to that. So there's sort of this half step between departmental operating procedures, which that would be, and policy, if that's helpful.
It's helpful. And I guess even to go further, under the district technology, since that's a separate issue, but kind of all under the same umbrella, how, again, making sure our whatever the guidelines are, when I said we needed to strengthen where it says schools will monitor screen time and all that, okay, we obviously need to teach the administrators or whoever's going to be doing the monitoring at the schools, what should they be looking for as far as excessive? What is the definition of excessive? I don't know, and it will probably depend on the class and the age and the content of whatever it is. So that's, I'm assuming, is going to come out into any training. Okay, because I think sometimes we have folks that look at our policies and they're expecting that level of detail, and it's really, this is more of a overline, this is how we're gonna direct everyone, but then the weeds of how it gets carried out is handled in a different way.
Yes, that is
Okay,
correct.
okay.
That is exactly
I'm just making sure I'm understanding that.
And if I could add to, our current training for every platform that we use does involve training on the usage window for each student. Based on whatever a student needs, there's a range of time that they should be using those platforms. And that is part of our training. We also have done training on how to pull those usage reports at the building level, how instructional coaches, teachers, administrators can monitor those reports. We're currently also working with the Office of School Leadership to see how our principal supervisors can support that work, as well as our academics coaches who are working in schools. So we're trying to be very comprehensive in the support for pulling that data, evaluating that data, so that it doesn't solely fall to the school, so that we can also continue to guide. Our general impression is that if a teacher is using a platform beyond the recommended usage, it's because there's a lack of understanding or a lack of training that needs to be revisited. And so that would give us an opportunity to identify those areas to improve as well.
Okay, thank you so much. Ms. Levent as well.
Yes, thank you. I'm going to agree with Ms. Mosley on the schools that will monitor screen time. I know you said that there are flags that go off if they're on too long. Is that correct? No? On AI? If a teacher's using it in their classroom and it's on and on and on?
There are reports, there are usage reports that we can pull, that we can review to see how long students and teachers are on any given site at any given time.
Because I don't want this to become a crutch, a tool that is used for downtime. If you know what I'm saying. And teachers, you know, I know when you went from from traditional to block schedule, teachers had a year to teach, and they could not, some of them, could not figure out how to use all that time on the block schedule because they were used to it being expanded over a year. And so then what they did at the end of 52 minutes, they just said, all right, just get on your, devices, look up something on YouTube and do a report of one. Okay, I don't want that to occur here. Now, they've had a year now on block schedules, so I think they're getting more in tune to the schedule and the timing. But when we look at, I have a question on Magic School, this program. How long have we signed a contract, or is this a pilot, or what? How long are we in this for?
We have an annual contract that we review and renew with them.
It's an annual contract. Okay. And that's when you work out the tweaks. Are you locked into this Magic School, or are you looking, I'm sure there are lots of things coming up now with AI.
So we would follow our district procurement policies anytime we're looking at any sort of a platform and the appropriate use of that. But considering we have selected that as our platform, that is really where we're investing our time for training, professional development, and support, so that we are not giving our schools mixed messages by recommending other platforms outside of the one that we have selected.
I guess we're perfecting this to our district and our classrooms.
Correct. Our focus is on building teacher and student capacity on the appropriate use of this tool to improve instruction.
And do you see any negative, Doug, I appreciate this. This really is better than what I expected. So thank you. I think there were more details to it than I thought we were going to do, and I was a little concerned, but I feel better. So thank you. I lost my train of thought, but I just want to make sure that, okay, so when new teachers come in, how are they put into this? What kind of instruction? Because we're having transfers in from other districts and so forth that don't have this already in place, and AI is everywhere. They're using it in the lotteries now. They're using it in everything you'd think of. So I'm just trying to think, how are we going to help a newcomer to our district get a smooth sailing?
So we actually have multiple different entry points for teachers depending on how they are coming to us. meaning if they are a brand-new teacher coming to us from a teacher preparation program, as an induction teacher, we have coaches that are specifically have this identified as a content area to train them on and to coach them on. And then GATE teachers and GATE coaches have the same similar approach. And then if a teacher transfers, a very experienced teacher transfers to us, then at the school level, we have systems in place to make sure that our teachers have access to that professional development. As a reminder, it's not a required use tool. So a teacher should not feel pressure on day one to be proficient. This tool has not only the initial training platforms, but has multiple different modules, online modules, that they can navigate throughout the course of the year or a semester, and they can begin to use that tool as they feel confident, as they feel like it's an appropriate tool for their students to use. But it is nothing that a teacher should feel like on day one they have to have mastery of. There are requirements for them to complete prior to putting it in front of students, as we would expect with any resource. But our students also have a training component that they have to complete before they access it. So all of those things are very clearly laid out, and then depending, as I said, on the entry point into Greenville County Schools, we target the way we support our teachers.
We're going to really make sure they understand ethical behavior when it comes to this program and the limits. And these kids are a lot smarter than some of our teachers when it comes to AI now. And so we have to be 3 steps ahead, or even 5, because they're already into all this. So just don't want them going off, and got to reel them back in. All right, thank you, Dr. Stevens. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. LaVentus-Wells. Does anyone else have any questions? I have a couple more, but I'll hold off. Ms. Middleton?
Madeline, you mind talking into the microphone?
I'm sorry. As far as the AI goes, how could, I know you have a comment here about ethical use and all that. How could it be, can you give me an example of how it could be used unethically? I kind of have this feeling that Magic School is a very standard sort of a program. Like, how would kids be in it and use it unethically?
You want to take that one?
We don't want to tell you that.
Well, okay, don't tell me that.
Everybody's hearing this.
Sorry, oh, yeah.
No, with our Greenville County Discipline Code, we have expectations for student behavior. I will give you a real-world example that is actually pervasive throughout certain regions of the U.S. right now, in that students are bullying the AI model or the tool. They are, in that chat, if you remember back to our opportunity to workshop, they are addressing the AI in a negative fashion, and they are provoking the AI. Well, so we would consider that outside of the boundaries of, it may not rise to the level of unethical, but it certainly is outside of our expectations for student behavior in any sort of negative speech or hate speech or inflammatory speech. So that's one excuse, of course, or one example. Another certainly would be any form of cheating, any form of plagiarism, any form of opportunity to take a response from a system and pass it off as their own thinking. That defeats the purpose of the tool. The tool should not be a substitution for critical thinking. So that would probably be the clearest example I could provide.
Okay, I guess I'm still struggling with the thought. I feel like this is something that you would use as a work assignment, or, like you chatting with this AI thing and they're kind of giving you ideas and you're asking more questions, but it's not being used as testing or anything like that. So how would someone be cheating on it?
Well, again, so even though if it's not taken for a grade, a teacher should still be meeting with that student and still be conferencing with that student. So the student would have the onus of representing their thinking versus the system's thinking. So that teacher would have to have to be having those conversations with the student in that specific example. Does that make sense?
Well, I have 3 kids in Greenville County Schools, so, my example would be if a teacher makes it clear that AI is not to be used on a certain assignment, and then my child uses AI when they're not supposed to, that would be a clear violation as well.
Is there someone from Magic School that trains the teachers on how to use it? I mean, does someone come in and actually conduct some kind of a class? So
We can contract that. They, as I said, they have produced hundreds of tutorial training clips and modules that are, to be quite honest, our teachers actually prefer that because the teachers can complete those on their schedule versus having to stay after school to participate in a professional development. And we can be a little bit more targeted with those supports. But certainly, if we felt the need to bring in someone to support that from the Magic School vendor side, we could investigate that.
I guess that AI sort of scares me a little bit because I feel, like it's come up before, that it could be used as a crutch. I could see that happening where a teacher would just be like, well, work on that for a while and,
I would
that's what
argue-
scares me.
I would argue that any resource could be used that way. If a teacher approached a magazine, when I was a kid, remember the Highlights magazine? A Highlights magazine could have been a crutch. Anything that is used without intention, without very strategic planning, and that's not aligned to a standard or without purpose, could be perceived that way. I think the onus on us is, as we've heard from our corporate partners, as we know from industry, we have to be able to send students into the workforce with a foundational skill set, or we are doing a disservice to them. So how do we do that in a way that ensures that we've provided that skill set and the ethical and the critical thinking skill set they need, while also balancing the teacher understanding for how to use it? And I think this is a great foundational start for that.
Makes sense. And one final small question. Looking at how some of this is written and everything, I always have struggled with when you're using the word shall or will. And like in the district technology was saying schools shall, which, does that give any leeway, or is that different than saying schools will, or, and then I also agree with what Ms. Mosley was saying, and Ms. Levent as well, too, is that we do need to be maybe very clear that it's across the board, that consistent for all schools.
So yeah, will and shall for the purpose of the legal world and policy world means the same. What I try to do is be consistent, but also if you use shall throughout too many times, it almost seems harsh. So you can lighten it up by a little bit with will. That's how I've done it historically. But as long as it's clear that is the requirement, I think that's the key. But I agree with you. I think there's an opportunity to have a little bit more detail in this draft policy. To Dr. Royster's point, I think it's a balancing act between an administrative rule that will accompany this down the road. But again, that administrative rule will use this policy as a compass, right? When I draft administrative rules, usually I will kind of mirror the sections of the administrative rule with the sections of the policy. So, I think there's going to be a great opportunity for us to have an administrative rule with a lot more detail. But I do think there is an opportunity to have more detail in this policy as well.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Middleton. Ms. Levent as well, did you have another question?
Yes, I do. First of all, I'd like to say I do like the paragraph under G, monitoring and evaluation, because you talk about plagiarism, et cetera, inappropriateness and stuff like that. Since we just got this, I know this is a draft, and I know we're going to have another meeting, because once I really dig into this, I just need some time to just look at this and read this. These were just off the top of my head, comments. But I know I'm going to have other questions, but I do appreciate you addressing, I do worry about the bullying, you know, that issue, because I actually had a parent that contacted me about the issues with AI and the bullying. It wasn't on a program, but how they could get into, and I don't know if they can, I don't know enough about it, but I. Okay, I just don't want any issues with bullying. I mean, we've got enough issues with it, without it in AI, but I do like the ramifications and what will occur, et cetera, and holding people liable and responsible. So, but I just need more time to really dig, but this really is a great, great start.
And, you know, if anyone has additional thoughts, I think either Ms. Mosley will certainly be glad to talk to you, or you can call me. I'm happy to talk to you, and then we'll all work together on making improvements.
I think this is a great start. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Levent, as well. I have two more questions. Does anybody else have a question before? Okay, so back to the transparency, and I'm going to assume, Dr. Stevens, that this kind of goes along with your earlier comment. As you use whatever policy we end up with, as you use that to flesh out guidelines for some of these other things, I'm going to assume, because obviously this is a big, important letter F, transparency is big. And because it says, the use of AI will be transparent so that parents and guardians can understand and become knowledgeable of the specific technology used in schools. Great, that's a great statement. How? Like that's what I want to know is how do parents, if they really have an interest in stuff, and so I'm assuming there's going to be some plan
There is,
to educate parents on how they can monitor and access and
absolutely.
kind of keep tabs on this.
So, as a reminder, specific to Magic School and specific to most of the platforms that we use, we push communication out to our parents in a variety of ways. Magic School required a parent letter. We required a parent letter because of the AI component to it. Sometimes that is information that goes out through parent handbooks, through newsletters, through backpack, through newsletters, depending on the grade, depending on whatever the platform is. But in addition to that, we're also working on an implementation handbook for technology that once, again, this is finalized, we will be able to really identify what transparency means for Greenville County schools, what that looks like, and what parents can expect from schools, to receive from schools, and then most importantly, how they can ask and who to ask at the school level for additional information. And we feel like, again, once this is complete, that will really give us the framework for how to put that in place.
Thank you. I figured you had a plan, but I just wanted to make sure. And so then the larger question I have about AI in general. So when Representative Guthrie was here at the last meeting, a few of us met with him afterwards. And I wrote a lot of notes, some of which I don't fully understand all of the meaning behind, and I'm not going to pretend to have that technological expertise. However, he brought up, not necessarily with Magic School, but just AI in general, some concerns about does this tool like learn the child as like if we're starting in middle school as we go, and you don't necessarily have to have an answer to this, but how do we avoid, like I know we're saying we're going to avoid bias and making sure that we're doing all that, but I'm going to assume we have a technical team in place and stuff that is with this brave new world, that this is we're going to have someone on staff that's an expert at paying attention to all of these things that we may not even realize could happen. Maybe they haven't happened yet. You know, I'm really just looking at it more of the monitoring piece of it, because I think that's going to be critical for parents to have trust in what we're using.
Absolutely. And you're absolutely right. So those safety parameters are actually the driving force to why we selected Magic School, because it is not a large language model where it does not learn the student's information the same way that a ChatGPT would. It doesn't retain information and then build on that over subsequent uses. As a reminder, when we went through that module, the teacher has to create the assignment, select the tools that a student can access, and then push it to the student. So that is a continuously refreshing system. So there is not an opportunity for that to hang on to student information from assignment to assignment. So that was really part of our driving force behind the use of that.
Right.
Leads to another question.
You have another question?
Go ahead. Short one.
Go ahead.
Parents that, okay, so are these assignments, do they go home or these are all done in class? Because if a parent is going to, if a child needs help and the parent doesn't know anything about this, how do we deal with that?
Can you tell me more, when you say doesn't know anything about it, doesn't know how to help, or doesn't know that the student's using it?
Right. And is not sure that the child is doing what they should be doing.
I would say two things with that. Magic School, with the way that those modules and tools are made available to students, it's very intuitive. If you remember our workshop here, it will prompt you that the modules, you can even just type in there, help me understand the next step, and it will help prompt that. So it's very user-friendly, and it's something that a parent can sit next to a student and watch and see exactly what the student is engaged with, exactly what the student is seeing. So there's that component. Additionally, Magic School has made a wealth of those videos available for families and for communities to see what is the tool. And so you don't have to be a Magic School student participant to be able to access some of those videos that showcase exactly what Magic School offers. And so there is actually a small video clip that we make available for families as we push out that information in the beginning of the year.
Thank you. No further questions.
Much. Does anybody else have any other questions before I direct this last question to Doug? So, Doug, haven't participated in a policy revision yet before, so it's the best thing for us as a committee to have committee members give me their feedback and have me give it to you, or have them give it to you directly, and then you come back with, I guess, a revised version of what you gave us today for us to kind of
We've done
finalize?
a number of different ways in the past with committees similar to this. So it's really your choice. Whether you want to be the one to sort of listen and talk and then communicate directly with me, that might be a sort of a effective, efficient path. I'm fine with that, or I'm happy to work directly with board members.
So my fellow committee members and other board members here, why don't you do this? Why don't you get me any additional feedback, like Linda said, after you have a chance to read through this a little bit more, maybe something comes to you after thinking about something Dr. Stevens has said or something Doug has said. If you feel like you need clarity or I can't answer the question, you can certainly communicate with Doug. And then let's do that within the next, well, let's see, we're bumping up against Thanksgiving. So I'll tell you what, I'll have Nancy send out an email to everyone and give you a kind of a deadline. And then we'll go from there in terms of our next meeting time to try to nail down the final language in this. Does that sound like a plan? Okay. All right. Anybody else have any input or thoughts or concerns? Okay. Well, Doug, I really, really, really appreciate the effort that you put into this, as well as the rest of the team, Dr. Stevens' team, because I know for a fact that this has been a big concern for a lot of parents out there. I know, and I believe you told me in an email that we might be the first district in the state that's putting this last section in with the technology.
To my knowledge, we will be the first one to have language that is similar to Section 3 in there, and really one of the first ones to have language regarding AI in policy. There are a few, but not many.
Right.
And even some of the big school districts that you would imagine would have tackled AI have not yet. So, I mean, we're still on the sort of leader, obviously, and we always strive to be a leader nationally. So, I think it's good to have this as a board policy.
I really do appreciate it, especially that last section, because I think it's needed. We've been hearing for a few years, before we even got into AI, that we needed to have a little bit more parameters, guidelines, whatever, around technology use. So, okay. All right, well, if there are no other questions, in the interest of time, I'm going to, do I need a motion to adjourn? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second? All right, this meeting of the ad hoc committee for AI and electronic device use is over.
Dinner time. Dinner time.